Abiding fam, and welcome back to my channel, or hello if you're new. Today we are doing another journal entry in my Abiding journal, and this was a really fun day that we spent with friends. And if you can guess what I'm currently making using my gelatos and a baby wipe, as I essentially draw using my finger through this baby wipe. So I'll give you a moment longer to try and guess what it is I'm drawing here with the baby wipe, but for the moment I'm going to talk a little bit about the technique. So one of my favorite techniques for doing a really soft colored effect is to use a baby wipe and a gelato. So gelatos are a pigment that is water soluble. So when you use something like a baby wipe, it softens the pigment and allows you to move the pigment around using that little bit of wetness. So essentially I can draw with the baby wipe using my finger. And now you should have been able to start guessing what it is I'm drawing here, and that of course is grapes. And you can tell that I started out with a really light layer, and then by continuing to add pigment in darker and darker circles, it really gives it a 3D effect. So anytime you're using a water-soluble pigment, whether that's watercolor, paints, or gelatos, you always start out with a really light color, a really light base, and always add to it to create the darker portions or the shadow effects. So that's a really fun technique to use within your journal. And the great thing about gelatos and using the baby wipe is it doesn't saturate your page, so you don't really have to worry about bleed through, and it still gives you that soft watercolor effect. And then I went in with a watercolor pencil from Arteza to just do more of the detail work. So the reason that I am drawing grapes is because on this particular day, my fiance Ben and I went over to our friend's house and somehow ended up in their backyard helping them pick grapes off of these vines that they have. And we ended up making homemade grape juice that day, and it was such a fun little surprise activity. We didn't go over there with the intention of making grape juice, it just kind of happened spontaneously, and it was a really fun time. And so of course I wanted to commemorate that here in my journal. And I thought what a more fitting way to do that than to, of course, draw grapes right into my journal. And this was just a really fun technique to do that. So I was really happy with how that particular part of the entry turned out. So originally I thought that this entry would just be one page, but the grapes ended up being a bigger portion of the entry than I thought they were going to be. So I ended up deciding to actually make this a 2-page spread. So I figured I could use that blank space under the grapes to mostly include just the photos from the grape juice making. And then over on the right side, because on that same day we went out to dinner and actually watched a really beautiful, beautiful sunset, I decided to use the gelatos again to keep that same soft look. But this time I am using them, as well as some of the Arteza watercolor pencils, to mirror that sunset. So I am essentially drawing it in a very impressionistic way. Obviously it is going to be very soft and not 100% realistic, but the idea is to capture the essence of the sunset. So keep that in mind when you're doing any form of drawing in your journal. I think sometimes we can get very caught up in trying to be perfect and trying to replicate exactly what we saw, when in reality, the true purpose of art and creativity and drawing is not to perfectly replicate what we saw or experienced, but to capture the essence of it, to capture the feeling of that experience. So don't be so hard on yourself. It is not about your artistic skill when it comes to journaling. Rather, it is about capturing the memory as you experienced it. So the grapes that I drew here in my journal might not look exactly like the grapes that we picked that day. And that sunset that I drew with the gelatos might not look exactly like the sunset you see there in the photograph. But it's all about the process. because drawing those grapes and drawing that sunset, it brought me back to that time. It gave me the space and time to reflect on a really beautiful memory. And for me, the softness of those drawings, it brings back the soft beauty of such an ordinary yet wonderful day. And that to me is partially the point of art. It's not to, as I said, replicate things exactly as they are in real life, but to capture the feeling of them. And for me, these particular drawings capture the feeling of that day. So I say this as a form of encouragement. If you are someone who fears journaling because you fear that you do not have the artistic skills or ability to capture in art what you experienced, know that you can. You can, because it's not about meeting a super specific standard. It's about recording your memories in any way that suits you, and that's going to be a reflection of the way that you experienced them. There's never going to be a right moment. You can wait as long as you want to pick up your journal until you have the right skills or the right tools or the exact pencils or pens or watercolors, the best of the best. You can wait and wait and wait for those things to come, but ultimately, you're never going to feel ready if that's what you're waiting for. And ultimately, if you're waiting for those things, you're missing the point of journaling, because it's about recording your memories where you are, not where you hope to be in your artistic skills someday, not when you finally have all of the tools that different people say you should have, but right now, in this moment, recording your memories as you experienced them. So I hope that encourages you. I hope you enjoyed getting to see how I recorded the memories of this specific beautiful day in my journal. It was a really fun one to create, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe and join our Abiding fam. And if you'd like even more content like this, be sure to check out my Patreon. A big thank you to my patrons for making this video possible. Until next time, fam, I hope your day is full of abiding joy, love, and of course, creativity.